Hi, this is Matt Baker. Today I'm going to show you a chart from 1858 that displays some statistics about the signers of the U.S. Declaration of Independence. Every now and then I like to take a look at vintage pre-computer age charts like this because A, I find them to be quite aesthetically pleasing, and B, they can give us some interesting insight into how people thought about the past in the past. So first of all, here's what the Declaration of Independence looks like. As you can see at the bottom, it was signed by 56 individuals, with the most prominent signature being that of John Hancock, who at the time was the president of the Continental Congress. So what this chart does is it takes those 56 signatures and places them one per row, starting with John Hancock. After Hancock, the names are arranged by state, shown here, roughly going from north to south. So we can see that Pennsylvania had the most signers, 9, and Rhode Island had the least, only 2, but that all 13 colonies were represented. However, what the chart does not show is that there were actually 6 additional British colonies nearby that did not sign. These were to the north, Quebec, Nova Scotia, St. John's Island, and Newfoundland, all of which are now a part of Canada. And to the south, East Florida and West Florida, which were first of all ceded back to Spain, but then eventually did become part of the US later. Now, next to the name of each signer, we also get their date of birth, place of birth, education, and profession. I'll come back to the birth dates in a moment, but for now, take note that of the 56 signers, only 48 were born in the colonies. The other included 3 born in Ireland, 2 in Scotland, 2 in England, and 1 in Wales. As for their educations, 31 are marked as having either a collegiate, academic, or classical education, which I presume means that they received some sort of a higher degree. 12 are marked as having a liberal education, which a note at the bottom explains as meaning that their education was good, but that they didn't actually graduate from any particular institution. Finally, 9 are marked as having finished a common schooling only, and 4 are listed as being either homeschooled or self-taught. When it comes to their professions, the most common by far was lawyer, followed by merchant. But there were also 4 physicians, 2 clergymen, and a handful of farmers. Now, it is at this point in the chart that things get interesting, at least from a design point of view, because we suddenly get a bunch of lines going either up or down. Basically, what is happening is that the signers are getting rearranged by their birth dates, or age at the time of signing, with the oldest now being placed at the top and the youngest at the bottom. So, for example, although John Hancock is initially listed at the top, once things are rearranged by age, he ends up way down here at position 39. Meaning that there were 38 signers who were older than him. This means that by using the column marked 3, we can quickly determine who the oldest signers were, as well as the youngest. So let's try it out. This dot here represents the oldest person to sign the Declaration. If we follow the line to the left, we can find out who that was. If you know your US history, you probably already guessed that it was Benjamin Franklin, who was aged 70 at the time. What about the next oldest, though? Well, let's go back up here and follow the line. The second oldest was Stephen Hopkins at age 69. He was in poor health, which is why his signature appears very shaky. Let's now figure out who the youngest person was. Basically, we just start with this dot here and follow it left. And we end up with Edward Rutledge, who was just 26 years old. The second youngest was Thomas Lynch Jr., also aged 26. His father, Thomas Lynch Sr., was supposed to sign but became sick, so his son, Thomas Jr., had to fill in for him. Let's now go back up to the top of the chart and take a look at the next 2 columns. Column 4 indicates how many times the signer was married. So 1 dot, like for Benjamin Franklin, means once, whereas 2 dots, like for Stephen Hopkins, means twice. And if we look down the list, we can see that no one was married more than twice. However, there are 2 rows here with no dots at all, which means that there were 2 signers who never married. Let's figure out who those were. Again, we follow the lines to the left. And we end up with Caesar Rodney and Joseph Hughes. In Hughes' case, he was engaged, but his fiancée died suddenly just a few days before the wedding. Now, being that column 4 represents marriages, you can probably guess what column 5 represents. It represents how many children each signer had. So the person with the most dots had the most kids. Again, let's look down the list and see if anyone stands out. There are a few with lots of dots, but none with more than this guy here, who has 18. Once again, if we follow the line to the left, we can find out who it is. And in this case, it's Carter Braxton. He and Benjamin Harrison, who also signed, were both grandsons of Robert King Carter, and thus members of the famous Carter family of Virginia. Okay, moving back up to the top, we get another section of crisscrossed lines, because now the chart is going to show the order in which the signers died. So this dot here in column 6 represents the first person to pass away. Following the line to the left, we first learned that this person had 8 children and only married once. And if we keep going, we find out that the person was John Morton. In fact, he died less than 9 months after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, probably from tuberculosis. Let's now go back up and trace the second line to find out who the next person was to pass away. That person was Button Gwinnett, who died just 1 month later. Gwinnett is notable for 2 reasons. First of all, his name appears on the Declaration first, if we start at the top left. Second, he's the only one of the signers to die by duel. While the Burr-Hamilton duel is more well known, Hamilton was not one of the signers. Now, what about the last person to die? Well, let's go to the bottom and follow this line here. It leads to Charles Carroll of Carrollton, who died in 1832, and who was the only Catholic to sign the Declaration. His signature is interesting because it's the only one that includes a place of residence as a part of the name. He did this in order to distinguish himself from his father, who was known as Charles Carroll of Annapolis. Anyhow, Charles Carroll of Carrollton is also notable for one other reason, but I'm going to skip that for now in order to point out the second and third last persons to die, because they happen to be the 2 most important individuals on the entire chart. And curiously, they died on the exact same day, which happened to be July the 4th, exactly 50 years after the signing of the Declaration. If we zoom out and trace those 2 lines, we get John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, the only 2 signers who ended up serving as presidents, the second and third respectively. Take note that George Washington, the first president, was not one of the signers, nor was James Madison, the 4th president, although they both later signed the U.S. Constitution. Okay, let me now tell you about the last 4 columns. Columns 7 and 8 indicate whether or not the signer left behind a wife or any children, and the final 2 columns indicate the age to which the signer lived. And this is where we circle back to Charles Carroll of Carrollton, because not only was he the last signer to die, he was also the one who lived the longest, making it to age 95. As for the one who lived the shortest life, well, let's take a look. We have to start at this dot here, and then trace the line all the way up here, because he was the 4th to die. And then way back down here, because he was the 2nd youngest to sign. And, oh, we've already talked about him. That was Thomas Lynch Jr., the one who signed because his father got sick. You see, just 4 years later, he set sail for the West Indies, but the ship he set sail on disappeared. So he was declared at age 30 to have been lost at sea. Now, if you like charts and you're interested in U.S. history, you'll definitely want to check out our new Timeline of U.S. History, which is available as a poster from our website usefulcharts.com. It shows how and when each state was formed, as well as providing lots of other important information, such as which party held the House, Senate, and presidency at any given time. We also have a timeline of world history, a timeline of European history, as well as lots of historical family trees. So once again, if you're interested in learning more about any of these posters, just head over to usefulcharts.com or simply click the link in the description or pinned comment. Finally, take note that from now until August 31st, we've got a project running over on Kickstarter, which is an expanded look at the evolutionary tree of life via 4 brand new classification charts. So if that sounds interesting to you, be sure to check that out too. Again, the link will be in the description and pinned comment. Thanks for watching.